It wasn't supposed to happen in the kitchen. After 3.5 years, 2 apartments, 1 dog, and a ring that sat hidden in my sock drawer for 3 months, I thought I'd have a story that started with something closer to fairy tale, not her breaking up with me over lukewarm pasta and an unfinished bottle of wine. I can still remember the shape of her lips when she said it. Not trembling, not remorseful, but certain. "You're not husband material, Ryan." Just like that. Like she was telling me we were out of milk. I had just finished plating her favorite, mushroom risotto, with the kind of attention to detail you usually reserve for dinner parties. But I didn't even get the spoonful to my mouth. I remember the silence after she said it. I blinked. Once. Twice. And I asked her to say it again. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I couldn't believe she'd rehearsed that line in her head and still went through with it. I mean, you're good, you're comfortable, sweet, but you don't challenge me. There's no edge. I want more, and I think deep down, you know it too. She didn't cry. She didn't even sound angry. That might have been easier. This was dispassionate, dismissive, like she'd already emotionally moved out. I don't remember how long I sat there. I don't even remember saying anything. I just remember watching her clean her plate, leave the fork in the sink, and head upstairs like she'd just crossed off a to-do list item. I stood in that kitchen like I'd just walked into someone else's breakup. It wasn't that I couldn't take rejection. I'd been dumped before. But this was different. She had let me believe we were building something permanent. She had met my parents. She had hinted at house hunting. And the worst part? I had believed all of it. I moved out the next day. I didn't fight for her. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. I packed what I could fit in my car and drove 2 hours to my brother's house in silence. Not a single song on the radio. My phone vibrated the whole drive, mostly from friends who had seen her newest Instagram story. One with her at some rooftop bar, laughing with her hand on another man's knee. It was posted an hour after I left. A week later, I got an invitation to her uncle's 60th. She probably didn't expect me to come, but I did, because part of me wanted closure, and part of me, the part she underestimated, wanted her to see that I wasn't broken, not on the outside at least. That's when I saw her cousin. We'd met a handful of times before, but only briefly. Her name was Leah, always a little quieter, the kind of woman who didn't speak unless she had something worth saying. She'd always seemed a bit distant, like she kept one foot out of the room no matter how many people were in it. I didn't think much of her until that night. I was at the drinks table, pretending to enjoy soda water, when I heard her voice behind me, calm, measured. "She said you weren't husband material?" I turned, surprised. She wasn't smiling, not really, but there was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. "I don't remember telling anyone that," I said. She didn't. I overheard her tell her mom. She sounded proud of it. There was a long pause. I expected her to follow it with some obligatory family loyalty, an excuse, a shrug. But instead, she stepped closer, close enough for me to smell her perfume, something clean and a little warm, like cedar and vanilla. Then she said it, quiet, but deliberate. "Well, that's exactly why I want you." My stomach tightened, not with discomfort, but something much stranger. She held my gaze for just a moment longer than necessary. Then she picked up a drink and walked away like nothing happened. I didn't know what the hell to make of that. I didn't even know if she was serious. But I thought about that moment the rest of the night. I watched her move through the room, polite, quiet, but always watching. Not shy, just observant, like someone who had been studying a game for years and was finally ready to make her first move. I left that party with 100 questions, and not one of them was about my ex. It started as a text I almost deleted without reading. I didn't recognize the number at first. No name. Just a short message. Still thinking about what I said. "If you want to talk, I'm around. L." It took me a minute to piece it together. L. Leah. Her cousin. The one who'd dropped that little bomb at the party and walked away like it was nothing. I stared at the message for a while. My gut told me not to answer, that it was messy, that it would go nowhere. But I couldn't stop thinking about her face when she said it, the lack of hesitation, the quiet certainty, the way her eyes held mine without apology. So I answered. "Talk where?" I texted back. She replied in seconds. "You like bookstores?" That Saturday, I met her at an old converted house-turned-bookshop on the edge of town. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner by the window, legs crossed, wearing dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that looked like it had been worn and loved for years. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was actually reading. Who does that anymore? When she saw me, she gave a small smile and closed the book. No hug, no awkward greeting. Just, "Glad you came." We talked for over an hour. And not about my ex. Not really. Leah asked about my work, my family, my music taste, even my worst date. She laughed when I told her I once got ghosted halfway through dinner because the girl suddenly remembered she had a cat allergy and bailed. It wasn't a flirty kind of laugh, not forced or teasing, just warm, real. Eventually, I asked her why she messaged me. She looked down at her empty coffee cup for a moment, then said, "Because I couldn't stop thinking about how unfair it was." "You mean what she said?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, that she got to walk away after all that and still feel superior. That she discarded you like you didn't mean anything, and no one called her out on it." There was something tight in her voice, controlled, but intense. I realized then, this wasn't just about me. She had her own wounds when it came to her cousin, maybe more than I realized. "Why didn't you say something back then?" I asked. She blinked slowly. "Because I was stupid. Because I thought she'd eventually implode on her own, and I didn't want to get caught in the blast. But seeing her do it to you, someone who actually cared about her, that was the last straw." She stood up then, slid a small note card across the table. It had her number on it again, and below it, "Only if you want to." Then she walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was confused, but because for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't bitterness. I felt a door creak open that I didn't think was ever going to move again. I texted her the next morning. "What are you doing tonight?" She replied, "Depends. What kind of trouble are you planning?" I wrote back, "The kind that starts with Thai food and ends with bad Netflix choices." She showed up at my door at 7:03 p.m. Hoodie, no makeup, a bag of takeout in one hand and a bottle of cheap red wine in the other. She looked at me like she already knew this was a bad idea and was doing it anyway. We ate, we talked, we didn't touch. But the tension? It was there. Not rushed, not fake, just simmering. Every time she laughed. Every time she leaned just a little closer than necessary. Every time her hand brushed mine while passing the remote. And still, we didn't cross that line. When she left, she paused at the door. "I'm not trying to replace her," she said softly. "I'm just tired of watching good people get stepped on." "I'm not looking for a rebound," I said. "Good," she replied, "because I'm not built to be temporary." She left without kissing me. But the silence she left behind in that apartment? It didn't feel empty. It felt like something was about to begin. I wasn't planning to see her again that week. But the universe, or maybe just poor judgment, had other plans. It was Thursday. I was grabbing coffee before work at a spot halfway across town when I saw her. My ex. Amelia. She hadn't changed much. Still walked like the room belonged to her. Still dressed like every outfit was prepped for an Instagram story. But this time, she wasn't alone. The guy with her was older, confident. One of those corporate types who probably wore leather shoes even to bed. She was laughing at something he said, her hand on his forearm, and in a single moment, the rest of it made sense. She hadn't left because I was too safe. She left because she already had a backup plan. I didn't approach. I didn't need to. She never saw me. But that image burned into the back of my brain for the rest of the day. Not because I wanted her back. That was long dead. But because I hated being made into the villain in someone else's story when I was never even given a fair page. Later that night, I called Leah. She didn't pick up, but she texted back, "You okay?" I wrote, "Do you have time to tell me the truth?" 15 minutes later, she was at my door. No takeout, no wine, just her in a black coat, hair damp from the rain. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She stepped through, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You saw them, didn't you?" I nodded. She sat down without taking off her coat, like she was ready to leave the second it got too real. And for a second, I wanted to let her, because I could already feel the hurt coming. But I needed the full picture. "Did you know about him?" I asked. She hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. "I didn't know it was serious," she said quietly. "I knew she was texting someone. I knew she wasn't being honest with you. But I didn't know she'd actually leave you for him." I sat down across from her, arms folded. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her voice tightened. "Because I was angry. Because I thought it wasn't my place. Because I thought maybe she'd change. And because I didn't know you well enough yet to risk that kind of fallout." There it was. The uncomfortable truth. She had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. And she hadn't told me. Because back then, I wasn't her problem. "You helped her lie to me," I said, more a statement than a question. Leah didn't flinch. "I didn't lie. I stayed silent. And yes, sometimes that's worse." We sat in silence. Rain pattered against the window, the kind of sound that usually brings calm, but tonight it just added weight. Heavy, relentless. "I came clean because I hated seeing her win again," Leah said. "I hated watching you walk away with nothing but silence. I didn't expect anything from you, Ryan. I didn't want to be a coward again." I looked at her then. Not as Amelia's cousin. Not as the woman who might have saved me a month of heartbreak. But as someone who looked just as lost as I felt. Someone who was trying to make peace with being human. And despite everything, I still wanted her there. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured us each a glass of water. No wine tonight. This wasn't that kind of evening. When I handed her the glass, she touched my hand. Just for a second. But it was enough. "I don't know what this is," I said. "I don't either," she replied. "But I'm not walking away this time." We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch again. But she stayed. We watched a movie we didn't care about and sat on opposite ends of the couch. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like the space between two people. It felt like the start of something waiting to be built. There was a moment, maybe 2 weeks later, where I looked across the couch and realized something I wasn't ready to say out loud. I was starting to want her. Not in a rebound way, not in a petty, spite-fueled way, but in the kind of way that made you second-guess every wall you'd built to keep someone out. Leah and I had been spending more time together. No labels, no pressure, just long evenings, shared meals, and conversations that wandered into corners I hadn't explored with anyone in years. She never tried to fix me, never tried to prove anything. She just listened, and I hadn't realized how badly I needed that. It was a Thursday night when things shifted. We were sitting on my balcony, one of those late spring evenings where the air smells like grass and distant barbecue. She had her legs tucked up under her, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, hair pulled into a loose bun. We were drinking the same cheap wine she always brought, but this time it tasted different. She was laughing at something I said, one of those real laughs, the kind that reaches the eyes. And then it just stopped, like she'd forgotten the script, like something caught in her throat. Her eyes lingered on mine longer than usual. I felt it in my chest first. That familiar ache, the one that tells you this isn't casual anymore. "Say it," she whispered. I blinked. Say what? Whatever you've been holding back. I can feel it. I hesitated, not because I didn't know, but because once I said it, things would change. I want you to be wrong about me, I said quietly. I want to be the kind of man you don't regret choosing. She didn't move, didn't answer, but her hand found mine, slow, gentle, and her fingers wrapped around mine like it wasn't new, like she'd been doing it in dreams for months. Then she leaned in. The kiss wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was the kind that says, I've thought about this. I'm sure. Her lips were warm, soft, but certain. And for a second, the world narrowed to just the space between our mouths. I didn't know who leaned in first. I didn't care. But the moment after, that's where the weight came in. Because we weren't just two people kissing. We were two people carrying the fallout of a shared betrayal, trying to find something clean in the rubble. She pulled back slowly, her forehead resting against mine. Too soon, she whispered. Too real, I said. She smiled. Not a big one. Just enough to soften the space between us. We didn't sleep together that night. She stayed, but we just lay on the couch, her head on my chest, my fingers drawing slow circles on her back through the fabric of her hoodie. There was comfort in it, not lust, not urgency, but something steadier, safer. Around 3 a.m., she said something that stuck with me. I used to think love had to be complicated, that if it wasn't messy, it wasn't real. I didn't say anything. I just kissed the top of her head and hoped that maybe, for both of us, simple could finally be enough. There's a certain kind of peace you feel when you finally stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. When you let yourself believe that maybe, just maybe, this time won't end like the others. I let myself believe that with Leah. I let myself believe in soft mornings and quiet touches and her sleepy smile when she curled up against me on the couch with a book in one hand and my shirt in the other. We weren't anything official. Not yet. But it felt real. It felt like a slow-burning truth we were both finally ready to live inside. Then came the text that cracked the foundation. It was a Thursday, nearly 3 months after our first real kiss. I was on my lunch break when I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting, no explanation. Ask Leah what she was doing the night you moved out. Ask who drove your ex to her new boyfriend's place. I stared at the screen, stomach tightening. My first instinct was to delete it, call it spam. But something about it didn't feel random. It felt targeted, specific. Someone knew the exact pressure point. I waited 2 hours. I shouldn't have, but I did. Then I asked. We were at my apartment. She was curled up on the couch again, legs tucked beneath her, one of my hoodies hanging off her shoulder like it belonged there. I sat beside her and handed her my phone with the message pulled up. Her body went still. I watched the color drain from her face. I didn't think it would come out this way, she said quietly. That was all I needed. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just waited for her to tell me what I already knew was coming. I didn't lie to you, she said, but I didn't tell you everything either. I folded my arms. Start talking. She took a breath, a long one. The night you moved out, she called me. Amelia. She said she needed a ride. Said she didn't want to be alone in an Uber going to his place. And her voice cracked. I drove her. Silence. She wasn't crying. She looked ashamed, but not broken. She didn't defend it, didn't justify it, but she said the one thing I hated hearing more than anything else. It was before you and I were anything. I was still bleeding, I said, still crawling out of what she did to me. And you, her own cousin, gave her a ride to cheat on me? She already had. I wasn't taking her to cheat. I was taking her to leave you for good. Better? I snapped. That's supposed to make it better? No, she said. It just makes it honest. I turned away, pacing, trying to control the fire in my chest. She didn't try to touch me, didn't beg, just let me rage in silence. "I didn't know you," she said. "Not really. You were her boyfriend. That's all I saw. And I'd spent years being afraid to cross her. She always got her way. She always manipulated people. And I was tired. So when she asked, I didn't think. I just said yes. But you knew what she was doing." "Yes," Leah said, voice steady now. "And I hated it. I hated her for it. I hated myself for helping. And that's why I came to you after. That's why I told you what she said. Why I wanted to be better." I sat down, not beside her this time, across from her. "So what now?" I asked. She didn't speak right away. Then she looked up at me and said the one thing that caught me completely off guard. "You want revenge? On her? I'll help you." I blinked. "Why?" "Because she's done this to everyone," she said. "And because I'm tired of cleaning up her messes instead of exposing them." I didn't answer. I should have walked away. I should have ended it clean. But instead, I sat there, looking at the woman who helped break me, and wondering if she was the only one who could help me finally put myself back together. I didn't answer Leah right away. Not that night. Not the next. I needed time to think, to sit with the weight of what she had said, that she had driven my ex, Amelia, to another man, that she had known what was happening and stayed quiet. But I also couldn't forget what she offered me. She was the only person who knew Amelia's tells, her patterns, her weaknesses. And for once, someone wasn't trying to protect her. They were trying to dismantle the pedestal she built for herself. Part of me hated that I still cared enough to want revenge. But the other part, the one still bleeding, that part was ready to finally take something back. So I texted her 2 days later. "Me. Let's do it. But not loud, not messy. I want precision. Leah. That's the only way I know." She came over that night. No smiles, no soft touches, just notebooks, screenshots, and cold determination. We sat at my kitchen table like war planners, and she laid it all out. Amelia had a pattern. She built connections quickly, usually with men who could give her something: status, access, appearance. She stayed just long enough to look invested, then flipped the story when she was ready to move on, made herself the victim, framed the guy as inadequate, then used the sympathy to attract the next. "She's been doing it since college," Leah said, "and no one's ever confronted her because she's good at making people feel small for questioning her." I nodded. I'd felt that smallness. I still wore it like a film over my confidence, but not for long. We started with what we knew. Amelia was with a new guy, a well-connected startup investor named Evan, the type who looked good on paper, the type she liked to be photographed beside. Leah had already seen her brag about him in private messages, but she also noticed something else. "She's already started talking about his business contacts," Leah said. "She's laying the foundation to jump again. She's done this before, uses one guy's circle to land the next." So we didn't attack her directly. That would have been too obvious, too emotional. Instead, I started rebuilding. Online, visibly, strategically. I updated my LinkedIn with new certifications, posted clean, thoughtful reflections on past projects, showed my progress, my calm, my growth. Then came Instagram, clean photos, scenic, curated, nothing showy, just strong, confident. I reconnected with people Amelia had quietly nudged me away from. One of them was hosting a dinner party, small, semi-professional, just enough overlap to warrant an invite. Amelia would be there. Evan, too. And Leah? She would come as my +1. It wasn't about flaunting anything. It was about letting her watch the person she once discarded move through the room without needing her anymore. Leah wore black, simple, sleek, elegant, nothing loud. But the moment we walked in, heads turned, and I didn't have to fake anything, because being with her, for all the damage and complexity, felt steady now. Amelia saw us almost immediately. Her face didn't crack, but her grip on Evan's arm stiffened. Leah noticed it too. She didn't expect this, she whispered. I smiled. Good. We didn't speak to her. We didn't need to. We moved through the room with quiet confidence. I spoke to people I hadn't seen in months, laughed without apology. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again, not the edited version she had shaped, but the final touch came near the end of the night. A friend of Evan's, a soft-spoken guy named Marcus, casually mentioned a conversation he'd had with Amelia earlier that week. She was asking a lot of questions about my VC firm, he said, not accusing, just surprised. I barely know her. I raised an eyebrow. She's curious by nature. He laughed. Or strategic. And just like that, I knew the timing was perfect. All we had to do now was give her enough room to make herself visible. And when she did, we'd be ready. It happened faster than either of us expected. 2 weeks after the dinner party, Amelia started following 2 of my contacts on LinkedIn. People she'd never met, never mentioned. One of them was Marcus, the guy she casually grilled at the event. The other was a woman named Taylor, a high-ranking exec at a company Evan had been trying to break into for months. Leah saw it first. She's already pivoting, she said, holding up her phone. Look at the timing. It's textbook. She's sniffing out a new move. I felt that familiar ache, not jealousy, but disgust, because Amelia didn't just walk over people. She did it with the kind of grace that made them question if they'd offered themselves as a welcome mat. We needed to push her just enough. Not over the edge, just to let her hang herself with the rope she always carried. So we created the bait. I posted a short, clean update on LinkedIn. Excited to be working on something new in collaboration with some powerful voices in tech. Sometimes the best opportunities come after the worst setbacks. It was vague enough to invite curiosity and specific enough to sound legitimate. Within an hour, I got a text from an unknown number. Congrats. You always were good at landing on your feet. I showed Leah. She rolled her eyes. She's warming up. Watch. She'll reach out to your contacts next. She was wrong. Amelia reached out to me instead. It started as a casual message, just wanted to check in kind of thing. She asked if I was still seeing Leah, or whatever that situation is. I didn't respond. 2 days later, she sent a follow-up. I've been thinking. I'm not saying we made a mistake, but maybe we didn't give each other the best version of ourselves. I laughed. Out loud, alone in my kitchen. Leah read the message and shook her head. She's not coming back because she misses you. She's coming back because she's losing control. We waited another few days, just long enough to let Amelia stew. Then Leah made the move. She messaged Evan. Not a warning, not a threat, just a single link. A private Google Drive folder containing screenshots, texts, timestamps, old messages Amelia had sent Leah while she was still with me, openly bragging about stringing me along while exploring better options. Leah didn't write a message, didn't even include her name, just the folder, the truth, in raw form. We didn't hear anything for a week. Then Amelia went dark. Her Instagram disappeared. LinkedIn activity stopped. Evan's page no longer listed her in his life updates or tagged posts. Leah had a mutual friend confirm it. The engagement was over. Quietly. No drama. Just vanished. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought I'd want to celebrate. But the feeling that washed over me wasn't joy. It was relief. Relief that I hadn't lost my mind. That I hadn't imagined the manipulation. That someone else, someone close to her, finally saw what I saw. Leah stayed silent for most of that day. When she finally spoke, she said something I didn't expect. I thought I'd feel proud, but all I feel is tired. I nodded. That's what surviving people like her does. It makes you mistake exhaustion for victory. We didn't toast. We didn't post anything. We just sat on the floor of my apartment, backs against the couch, sharing a bowl of cold pasta and the kind of silence that only comes from surviving something quietly cruel. And somewhere in that silence, something else began. Not revenge, not relief, but restoration. It showed up in my mailbox without a return address. A plain, ivory envelope, No handwriting on the front, just my full name typed in a serif font that reminded me of corporate resignation letters. I almost didn't open it. It sat on my counter for 2 days, unopened, tucked beneath bills and pizza coupons. But something about the weight of it gnawed at me. I had a feeling. Not dread, not exactly. More like recognition, like a shadow of something unfinished. When I finally slid my finger under the flap and pulled the letter out, my stomach tightened. It was from Amelia. No dramatic introduction, no apology. Just 2 pages, handwritten. Neat. Controlled. The kind of handwriting that looks like it practiced for this moment. I'm not writing this to get you back. I know that's gone. I know I burned it. But there are things you never knew. And since Leah made sure to burn me down from the inside out, I figured you deserved the rest of the picture. I stopped there, considered tossing it, but the part of me that needed to close the loop kept reading. Leah always hated me. That's not new. She wanted you long before I let you go. She told me once, drunk, that she thought you were wasted on me, that I didn't know what I had. She swore she'd never act on it, said it was just a feeling. I felt the weight of that line, not because I believed it blindly, but because I knew Leah. I knew how quiet her feelings ran, how deep they had to be to surface at all. I don't know what she told you, or what version of the truth you've both decided to believe, but if she's your redemption story, I just hope you remember how easily she became my accomplice when it suited her. She was the one who convinced me to rip the Band-Aid off and walk away from you like it was mercy. She said you'd be fine, that you were resilient. There was a hollow space behind my ribs where that sentence landed. I didn't know if it was true, not completely, but I didn't need it to be, because the damage wasn't in the facts. It was in the possibility. I finished the letter. I don't want forgiveness. I don't expect it. I just want you to know that no matter what she says, she was never innocent. She played her part, and you were the consequence. If you're happy now, then maybe it was all worth it. But just remember who stood by and let you break. A. I didn't tell Leah about the letter that night, or the next. Not because I believed Amelia, but because part of me needed to sit with the question. Had Leah been rewriting her role? Had she really been on my side all along? Or had she just switched teams when it suited her? I started noticing things, pauses in conversation. The way she sometimes avoided eye contact when we talked about the past. It could have been guilt. It could have been exhaustion. But I couldn't unsee it. One night, as she lay beside me, her head on my chest, fingers tracing idle shapes across my stomach, I asked her something I never had before. Why did you come to me that night? Really? She didn't move, didn't answer right away. Then, softly, because I was tired of watching her win. I nodded, even though I wanted more. Did you ever feel guilty? I asked. She lifted her head to look at me, eyes unreadable. Every day, but not for what you think. What then? For not saying something sooner, for knowing what she was and letting you find out the hard way. There was no mention of the letter, no confrontation, just a crack in the foundation that I wasn't sure how to repair. Because the truth? I didn't know what was real anymore. I didn't know if I was healing, or just building a new version of the same house with different paint. But I stayed, not because I was sure, but because I still wanted to be. I started dreaming about Amelia again, not in the way people think, not desire, not longing, more like a replay, the kitchen, her tone, that single line, "You're not husband material." It played over and over, but in the dream, I never responded. I just stood there, mute, watching her disappear down the hall like smoke. I told Leah. She didn't flinch, just ran her fingers through my hair and said, "Sometimes closure doesn't come with answers. Sometimes it's just the part where you finally stop asking." But the truth was, I was still asking, just not out loud. The letter haunted me, not for what it said, but for what it implied. That everything I'd rebuilt with Leah might have started in the shadow of a lie. And maybe that was unfair. Maybe I was projecting. But once a crack appears in a wall, you can't unsee it. You start watching for dust. I spent more time at work, more hours at the gym. Told myself I was clearing my head. But really, I was avoiding the growing silence between us. It came to a head on a Sunday night. We were watching something on TV. I don't remember what. I wasn't paying attention. I just kept looking at her profile. The way her expression shifted when she wasn't trying to be seen. And I asked the one question I hadn't let myself ask directly. Did you ever want me while I was still with her? She didn't look away from the screen, but I saw her body go still. No, she said. Not the way you mean. I admired you. I envied how you treated her. I wondered what it would feel like to be loved like that. But I never tried to take you. But you thought about it. She paused. I thought about a version of you that wasn't tied to her, that wasn't bruised from her games. But I never wanted you when you were hers. I wanted the version of you that could breathe. That should have comforted me. Maybe part of it did. But another part wondered, was I breathing now? Or was I still holding my breath? I got up, said I needed air, walked around the block 3 times. When I got back, she was gone. Not her stuff. Just her. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. I won't keep proving myself to someone who's already made up his mind. If you need me, you know where to find me. But I'm done convincing you I'm not her. L. I stared at the note for a long time. And then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't chase her. I didn't text. Didn't call. I sat in the silence she left behind and let it stretch. Because maybe I needed to know what I actually felt. Not what I owed. Not what I feared. But what I wanted. That week, I sat at a bar alone for the first time in years. I watched people around me laugh, touch, flirt, lie. And I didn't envy any of them. I just kept thinking about Leah. About how she walked into the fire when it would have been easier to stand on the sidelines. About how I kept making her pay for the damage someone else left behind. The next morning, I stood in front of her apartment door. I didn't knock. I stood there for 5 full minutes, rehearsing what I might say. And then I walked away. Because sometimes, the most honest thing you can do for someone you care about is leave the door closed until you're finally ready to walk through it the right way. 3 weeks passed. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing from her, and nothing from me. I thought about her every day. That last note. The weight in her voice when she said she was done proving herself. And she was right. She had spent more time cleaning up Amelia's wreckage than building anything new for herself. I was part of that wreckage. She tried to pick me up, polish the edges, and help me believe I was worth something again. And I made her prove it too many times. But that silence taught me something I hadn't understood until I lived in it. You can't build love from a place of survival. You have to choose it, not to fill a void, not to erase a memory, but to build something clean, even if it starts on broken ground. I didn't know if she'd forgive me, but I knew this. If I ever saw her again, I wouldn't ask her to. I'd just tell her the truth. And one night, I did. It was late, almost midnight. I'd walked halfway across the city after dinner with an old friend. I could have called a ride, could have gone home, but my feet brought me back to that familiar sidewalk. Her building looked the same, but something felt different. Not lighter, just clearer, like fog had finally burned off. This time, I knocked. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised, just tired, calm, maybe a little wary. "I'm not here to win you back," I said before she could say anything. "I'm here because I spent too long asking if I was worth staying for, and now I finally know I am." She crossed her arms. And if you still want me, the way I am now, not the broken version, not the bitter one, I'll spend every day building something that doesn't need to be proven." She didn't speak for a long time. Then she stepped back. "I kept your spare hoodie," she said. "It's in the bottom drawer." We didn't kiss. We didn't rush. We just sat, again, on the floor, sharing tea, not wine, tired smiles, not big declarations. It wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning, a choice. Leah wasn't my revenge. She was the part of me that survived it. And me? I wasn't husband material because I didn't know how to love without losing myself. But now I did. And maybe that's what made me ready. We never talked about Amelia again. She became a ghost, not a villain, not a regret, just a memory that no longer had claws. In time, we built a life that didn't start with damage. It started with clarity. Because sometimes, the deepest revenge isn't destruction. It's peace.